back to winning isn't easy. Benign Paroxysmal Positional Vertigo, BPPV, and your ERISA Disability Insurance Claim. Now, you may have purchased a disability insurance policy through your employer or covered under an employer-sponsored disability plan, or you might have bought your own individual disability insurance policy. You probably never thought you would have to file a claim for your disability benefits, but if you've been diagnosed with BPPV, you may be entitled to your disability benefits. So what is BPPV? Well, it's characterized by brief, recurrent bouts of vertigo, which is a sensation of spinning or moving or whirling. It's often triggered by changes in your head position and is thought to be caused by a displacement of small calcium carbonate crystals within your inner ear. The severity and progression of BPPV varies from person to person. It can cause mild symptoms, severe symptoms, and even debilitating and disabling symptoms that can reoccur even after treatment. So what are the symptoms that disability carriers or plans looking for in your medical records? They are looking for severe or recurrent symptoms that don't respond to treatment. They are likely to deny BPPV claims where the symptoms are infrequent and really don't interfere with your work activities. Unfortunately, though, disability carriers or plans tend to treat everybody the same way, sort of a cookie-cutter approach. And that can be problematic because the severity of symptoms and the impact those symptoms have on functionality vary from person to person. So what are they looking for in your medical records? Well, they're looking for things like the frequency of the episodes, the type of changes in your head position that might trigger an episode, the volume of calcium crystals that are moved, your symptoms such as vertigo, lightheadedness, dizziness, nauseousness, vomiting, blurred vision, and those sorts of symptoms. It's really crucial that you're giving a complete and accurate history of your symptoms, how those symptoms impact your ability to do your own occupation, how long those symptoms last, and how you feel after you have those symptoms. I will tell you that after they review your medical records, they're next going to look at the diagnostic studies that your doctor used to make the diagnosis of BPPV. So what is the diagnosis? How is it made? Well, it's made based on your history, including your symptoms and clinical testing and workup. The key diagnostic test is the Dick-Hall-Pike test, where you sit down on an examination table with your legs extended. Your physician rotates your head 45 degrees and then has you quickly on your back. If you have BPPV, you should have an episode of vertigo. Or you might have an issue with eye movement disorder characterized by rapid involuntary movement of the eye. Your eyes may jump or twitch in certain directions. The timing and appearance of this will help your physician decide what part of your inner eye is involved and differentiate vertigo caused by a brain disorder. The response, obviously, is subjective in nature. It relies on your report of symptoms, and disability carriers don't necessarily like to solely rely on that. They're looking for you to have undergone an MRI of the brain or a VNG test. After they decide whether there is an objective basis of the diagnosis and that your symptoms are consistent with that diagnosis, they're next going to look at your medical records for your treatment. Under the terms of disability policies and plans, you're required to undergo medical treatment that's reasonable and necessary and appropriate based on your medical condition. So they're going to expect that the treatment will include vestibular rehabilitation therapy, vestibular suppressant medication, maneuvers like the Epley maneuver, surgery, including things like canal plugging. Your medical records should document the nature of the treatment you got, your response to the treatment, and if for some reason you didn't undergo the surgery, why it was not performed, and the medical acceptable reasons for you not to undergo that testing or treatment that are still consistent with the diagnosis. Let's talk about how the disability carriers or plans are going to look at this claim. It's safe to assume that they don't really understand the diagnosis and symptoms and how they impact your ability to perform your own or any occupation. Now, the symptoms of BPPV are similar to some other medical conditions, and sometimes the disability carrier wants to have a definitive diagnosis and a rule out. So one of the things that they were looking at for a rule out is Meniere's disease, which is characterized by recurrent vertigo, unilateral hearing loss, and ringing in the ears. They're looking for a rule out of labyrinthis, which is an inflammation and swelling of the inner ear, which can lead to vertigo caused by head movements. They're also looking for a rule out for migraines, head trauma, vestibular neuritis, and that's the result of a viral infection of the vestibular nerve of the ear that can lead to imbalance and vertigo. And they're also looking for reduced blood flow secondary to a stroke or a hemorrhage. And they're also looking for a rule out of Mal-de-Barkman syndrome. So obviously what they're going to be looking at is what's the diagnosis, what's the objective basis of the diagnosis, are your subjective complaints consistent with the diagnosis, what's your response to the treatment that's been recommended, and what are your functional restrictions and limitations notwithstanding all of that. You really have to tie it together ultimately to show that you're unable to perform the material and substantial duties of your own occupation or any occupation. And simply saying that you have problems with dizziness or other issues with your balance or coordination isn't going to do it. It comes down to proof. I hope that you have enjoyed this week's episode of Winning Isn't Easy. If you've enjoyed this episode, please like it, the page, leave a review, share it with others, and please subscribe to our podcast. That way you're going to get notification of every time a new episode comes out. Please tune in next week for another insightful episode of Winning Isn't Easy.